Hello, welcome to the Productize or Perish podcast. I'm your host, Greg Davis. I'm the founder of Azola Creative. And each week, the goal of this podcast is going to be to help you focus on discovering new and creative product marketing strategies, as well as hearing some success stories, some real world success stories from others that are out there doing things similar to you. And then ultimately to share new and creative ways for you to dominate in your market. This is a new podcast. And what I hope is that this will be an opportunity for you to find a vehicle where your creativity meets a strategy, and we're able to help you turn those ideas into revenue. Now, again, my name is Greg Davis. I'm the founder of Azola Creative, and I just want to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about Azola Creative, and then we'll talk about what our subject is for this week's podcast. So, Azola Creative is a product marketing consultancy. And what that means is that I help clients of all different shapes and sizes basically develop a product marketing strategy for something that could be something that they've already released, but just didn't really pick up a lot of product adoption. Or it could be something that they're getting ready to release and they need help in developing a go-to-market plan for that. Now, one of the things I really love to focus on is this concept of service as a product. A lot of clients that I work with, they are selling services, very high-end custom services, managed services, where they're going into, say, a hospital facility or into some other type of organization where they're bringing an entire business unit kind of into that facility. And so what it means is that, they're very heavy in the services part of the business. It could be even a software scenario where they're building custom software for various clients. The problem with customized services or really heavily invested services is that there's no limit to what that can mean. So the idea of scope creep is very prevalent when it comes to services-based businesses. And so what I like to focus on, one of my favorite things to get to do is actually help turn services into a product or adopt what I call a service as a product sales model. And so one of the things that I've developed over the years to help my clients do this is what I call the IP Stratify Framework. So that's kind of the cornerstone of how I do a lot of the work that I do when it comes to the client consulting, is that I take them through what are really four steps in kind of developing a product. And it could be something where they already have a product. They might already have like a SaaS solution, or they have some kind of product that's out there. And I'm speaking more really B2B product, not necessarily B2C. But in the B2B space, there are really four areas that I focus on with the IP Stratify framework. And the first one is what I call a product nexus. And this is really just more of a repository of ideas. There's no shortage of ideas out there. The problem is that we just don't take enough action on those ideas. And so the idea behind the product nexus is really to gather all the intellectual property as best we can with different people within an organization and put that into a product roadmap, whether that be something that is actually going to be developed as a technology, or if it's just a matter of actually productizing what that service level is, so that it's more profitable because you can actually really outline what it is and what it isn't, and really make sure that you're fitting the customer's needs. And, it's very common for businesses to be, in operation for 30, 40, 50 years, but their market's changed or there's new opportunities that they don't recognize. And so that product nexus helps build a little bit of a better visibility into what the right ideas might be, or the right bets that you might place as far as like how to move forward with your product development. The second step in the IP Stratify framework is the scalability blueprint. And what this is that it really focuses on the idea of you building out completely the deliverables around, what a description of the service would be, what the true deliverables would be, how many hours you're willing to commit to each of those levels of service. Again, when you're doing custom services, sometimes if you're not really watching the clock, then time can just get away from you. And so this is a way to sort of button that up and really build in a profitability model for the products and services that you're selling. Now, I'm going to lead to this in a little bit because I'm going to talk to you about adopting an e-commerce mindset. And that's really going to be where this segues into. So the scalability blueprint is a very critical part of that e-commerce mindset. And I'll touch on that in a few minutes. The third step in the IP Stratify framework is the product launchpad. Now, this is a go-to-market strategy or a product marketing strategy, but it's a lot more transparency. It's built with a lot more transparency. The problem with a lot of companies is that they want to go and they want to launch a product, but they have very little visibility into how product marketing actually works, how product adoption actually works. They haven't built out good referral resources or sales channels. They don't really have the right resources in place for what it is that they need. And when I say resources, I mean that, they may be focused on just the wrong marketing channels. They might be thinking all about social media when they should be thinking about, email or affiliate marketing, or they should be focused on developing more content, or they shouldn't even worry about content. Don't worry about SEO. They should be worried about something else. So there's all these things that marketing is not a one size fits all. And so the product launchpad is really about just having an honest conversation based on what kind of budget do you have? Because again, your budget matters. I've had clients that wanted to spend $500 a month, but they were expecting $1 million in revenue. That math doesn't add up. And so, what is your realistic financial ability to invest in the marketing of this product? Because that will dictate how you develop your strategy. Plus, it will dictate just your level of success based on just the amount of exposure you can give to that product. And then the final step in this is the sales enablement toolkit. And what that is, that's really about building a better bridge between sales and marketing. A lot of times it's kind of silly to believe that this is real, but it's just the way it is. A lot of times, sales and marketing teams really operate in a silo. Sales doesn't necessarily understand what marketing is doing. They don't necessarily trust what marketing is doing. Marketing doesn't really communicate with sales. And sales isn't communicating with them. And so marketing is kind of doing their thing, sales is doing their thing, and there's a lot of hope we'll meet in the middle. Well, with the sales enablement toolkit, the idea is that you got to break down those silos and actually build a CRM process that matches both what marketing and sales are doing. It's making sure that you have the right personality traits. As an example, DISC profiles. I'm a huge advocate for DISC assessments, and it's a really great tool for learning how to communicate better. So, how does sales and marketing communicate better? What are the expectations? What are the steps that they should take? Let's say you send an email. Somebody clicks on the email. Well, when does sales engage and what do they say? There's all these different things that kind of get left out a lot of times because too often people have a build it and they will come kind of mentality. But by building out a true sales enablement toolkit, it gives you the ability to make sure that you have all the right tools in the toolbox for you to be more successful with your product sales. So that just gives you an idea a little bit around the structure and the framework and how I work with clients. But let me kind of transition a little bit into what I mean by adopting an e-commerce mindset. And this is again just a little bit of background. It's the first episode. I just want to make sure you kind of understand where I'm coming from to see if it'll be something that you're interested in engaging with more down the road. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I worked for several years in the music industry. Music is a deep, deep passion of mine, and you'll hear me talk about music again and again because it's something that I still love. I had the opportunity to work with several international recording artists. I had my own music on the radio. I just I was never the rock star, like the big famous rock star. You're never going to see my name in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, unfortunately. But I did have a great time and I had a great experience until it was no longer a great experience. I got to a point where I was just really burned out on trying to make a living in the music industry. It just no longer appealed to me. It was like a switch that just sort of went off. And I remember I was playing a gig in New York City, and the entire time I was playing, I was just not enjoying myself, and I couldn't wait for it to be over. And when the the show was over. I'm packing up my gear, and I just decided on the way I was walking to the train station, I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I put away my instruments and gear and got rid of a lot of the gear. And I think it was at least 6 months or more before I ever even took my guitar out of a case again. And I don't know what it was, but it was just one of those things where I just was really, really burned out. So after that, I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? I don't really know where to go next because that was always my passion. And now I felt like I don't have a passion. What is it that I'm going to do? What's going to motivate me? Well, luck would have it. I mean, this is truly a transformational opportunity and decision that started off as something very, very minuscule. Is that I thought, you know what? This is, I mean, look, like we're talking early 2000s. And so the internet was not what it is today. The music availability on the internet wasn't what it is today. And even e-commerce was not what it is today. Back then, e-commerce was still a little bit of voodoo to people, and they didn't really understand it. They didn't necessarily trust it. But it was something that I just had an interest in understanding better. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to get into some type of role in the digital space. Again, I don't know if I even thought e-commerce at that point. But I just knew I wanted to do something around what was happening with people selling things online. The other part of it that I recognized was that in all of the years that I was doing music, yes, I love to play and I love to write and I love to record and all that kind of stuff was really cool. But I think the thing I loved most was I really enjoyed marketing the product. I really enjoyed marketing the band or their songs or just coming up with creative ways to get better exposure for artists. And I think that was the thing that I learned out of doing music is that I really learned sales and marketing. I learned business because in the music business, you're number one, you're a solopreneur as an artist. You're really just trying to work your way into different opportunities and build out your personal business. And so, you learn how to negotiate, you learn how to sell, you learn how to promote, you learn how unfortunately, you have to hire and fire people sometimes. There's all these different things that are in business that you learn from that. And so that's really what the music business gave me as a foundation that then I decide I'm going to take this into the digital space. And so again, going back to my story, luck would have it, I found an ad for an e-commerce business that was just looking for a content writer. Now, back then, I don't think we called it content writing. We called it just copywriting. And so I applied for the job and went in to have an interview. And the interview process itself was just, it's interesting. And I gotta walk you through that just a little bit first. I go into this little small office, and there's a gentleman there who is from a country called Moldova. And if you're not familiar with where Moldova is or what Moldova is, it's a former Soviet Union country, but it's Eastern Europe. And this gentleman and his employer, who was soon to be my employer, spoiler alert, is they were all from Moldova, and the owners of the business had actually started this e-commerce business out of their apartment in Brooklyn. And so, first of all, I found that fascinating because I'm like, how does that happen? And at this point, they're in a large warehouse. They've got a photography studio for all their products, and they've got a warehouse in the back, and it's just all this stuff. I'm like, you started this out of an apartment? Like, how did that happen? Well, the way that I was interviewed basically was that they just had me like do Google searches on different products and write some descriptions here and there. And it turns out that really the most appealing thing that they were looking for was somebody who could write, but write in like American speak. Because they spoke English, but it was a little bit broken English because of just it being a second language to them. And so it was almost too proper. I shouldn't say broken as much as probably just too proper of English. And so it didn't have a natural flow in the way that they spoke and the way that they wrote. And so I was basically hired because I could write and I could write in American speak as far as just a natural language. And that was it. it was, I mean, really the funniest interview you could ever have, and just the fact that they had very low expectations and had very low bar as far as what it is they were looking for. But hey, I passed the test and I got the job. What turned out was just the best opportunity is that they hired me, but I learned anything and everything about running an e-commerce store. And I mean, they showed me just, how you manage the store itself, but how you market e-commerce, how you do pay-per-click, how you do SEO, affiliate marketing. There were comparison shopping engines. There were all kinds of different sites you had to get your, like directories that you wanted to get your site listed on for SEO purposes. The whole way that you write content from an SEO standpoint. I mean, all these different things they taught me. And so it was amazing because it really set me on a trajectory for my career, a totally different path, which brings us to now. So let me explain to you, like, just give you the short version as far as like what I mean when I'm talking about adopting an e-commerce mindset. Now, from that first job, I went on to work in e-commerce development companies, did a lot of work with hundreds, if not thousands, of e-commerce merchants and learned a lot from everyone that I worked with, including all of my coworkers, I mean, marketers and programmers and designers, all kinds of really cool stuff. But here's the heart of it is that when you sell something online, you have to remove yourself from the business. And what I mean by that is that you have to be able to sell everything that the buyer is going to get. They have to see it on that web page. They have to read it in the terms and conditions as to how they buy from you. They have to know the service level, what customer support you're going to provide. All of that stuff needs to be dictated up front, and it's locked down. As an example, you don't go to Nike and buy a pair of shoes, and then you're like, oh man, I don't know how to run. I don't run fast. Nike, I need you to come over and fix that. Like, I don't know how to run fast in these shoes. Like, Nike's like, that's on you because you bought the shoe. The same thing about anything that you're doing from a service standpoint, doesn't matter how custom it is, you have to you have to productize your customizations to where it can actually be sold online, even if you aren't selling online. I'm not saying you have to be an e-commerce business, but I'm saying you have to adopt that mindset because if you have the ability to sell everything online, it's all buttoned up the way that it would be if it was online, then you have built a more profitable product because you've removed so much of yourself from it. Because let's face it, when you're doing service-based kind of sales, you can kind of tap dance a little bit around things. There might be some things that aren't quite locked down when you do an agreement, and it's sort of everybody's sort of in agreement on both parties that, and it's kind of the goodwill of the contract, the intention of the contract is that you're going to take care of each other. If there are some things that pop up outside of the scope, you'll address them and try to come up with a solution that meets both parties' needs. Well, when you're buying something online, you don't have that discussion. There's no tap dancing. There's no change other than just purely you could send it back because you don't want it anymore and get a refund. But that is the buttoned up kind of product I'm talking about when I say productizing your services or doing a service as a product model. It's that you need to productize that to as much as possible so that you have the ability to just sell it as though you're not even there and it's just something that's being sold online. If you can do that, you're in much better shape. Now think about this, like think about a car. A car has essentially 36,000 parts. The average car is about 36,000 parts. Now, the majority, overwhelming majority of us, probably 99.9% of us, do not have a custom car built for us. We don't tell a car manufacturer how to build the car, where we want the nuts and bolts to be, how we want the windows to be placed, the wheels, all that stuff. We don't do any of that stuff because it'd be way too expensive. It would take forever. And there'd be too much mishap because what do I know about building a car? And I'm telling you how it should be done. So think about how cars are done. Cars productize all of that customization. And they give you options, though. This is why it's not to say that you can't have some flexibility. When you buy a car, you can get different colors, interior and exterior. You can have a sunroof or no sunroof. You can have, pick different kind of wheels you want, different type of stereo equipment, all these things. There are all kinds of customizations that can happen, but each of those customizations has been productized to where it's an add-on. Now when you do when you productize things, it becomes an upsell or a cross sell versus scope creep, which is what we all want to avoid. And so that is why I say adopt an e-commerce mindset is to think of, can you sell your product without you being there? And if you're a solopreneur listening to this or a small business owner, can you sell what you do without you being in the room? Can you do it without you even looking at it? Is it just buttoned up to where you just know it's running smooth without you? That is the goal. And that is what I focus on with my clients. And that's what I'm going to focus on with this podcast each week is I'm going to just try and take you down the road and the journey for what it means to be able to actually productize your services or just be more successful with your marketing in general. And so each week we will touch on different subjects that would dig into that. I'm also going to talk about music. It's just going to happen. It's inevitable. So you'll have to bear with me on that one. But it's actually a fun thing to talk about. It's really interesting when you look at product marketing and look at bands. It's the same thing. Now, again, most artists, musicians, they don't want to be thought of as a product, but guess what? It's a product. An album is a product, a song is a product, a concert is a product. I mean, it's all product. And so there are fun ways for you to sort of learn something just from looking at some of the success stories of different artists that are out there. All right, so that gives you the baseline around what it is we're going to talk about, and I hope you'll tune in. I hope you'll subscribe. That's the other thing I'm just going to ask is that few things just to give you a heads up on how to get in touch with me in the future. You can go to azolacreative.com. That's AZOLA creative.com, and that will get you to my website. And there you can learn more about IP Stratify Framework if you're interested in learning more about that. We also have an online community called the Azola Academy or Azola Community. And that's where there are a lot of different free resources that are there. For example, I have lead generation calculators that you can use, again, because it's all about the transparency part of marketing is that if you have a certain number of sales or leads that you need on your website, you need to understand what kind of traffic you need to make that happen. And so that can help dictate what your marketing budget or advertising budget might be. So, and if you don't have a budget, you get to go back to your boss and say, hey, how am I going to make these numbers work? That $1 million you want, but you only want to give me $500, the math doesn't work. So I need you to work with me on this, So it gives you some power to really understand how the marketing works. So those are some of the resources and tools that are in the community. So if you go to azolacreative.com, you can find the link there to join the community and get involved. Another thing to let you know about is just if you have ideas or topics or questions about marketing or product marketing, or even just want to discuss one of your favorite bands, contact me. You go to azolacreative.com/podcast. And there's a form there that you can fill out to just submit some questions or ask a question or show me a success story, something that you've done that was really cool. And then just be sure you let me know if it's okay to use your name or the name of the company on the podcast. I don't want to embarrass anyone if they don't feel comfortable having it listed publicly, but I can at least share your story. So you let me know about that when you fill the form out. So the other thing I'll just add is that there are a lot of different resources that I have out there for different areas when it comes to marketing and product marketing or just design, whatever it is. There's a lot of stuff out there, e-commerce. I'll be sharing those over time on the podcast as well. So each week I try to provide some free resources for you that could be something instrumental in helping you develop your product marketing strategies a little bit better. So again, tune in each week just to pick up those as a freebie for listening. Uh, Final thing is just remember, when it comes to launching a product, I believe that you need to move fast and kind of I know it's kind of cliche to say fail fast, but it really is true. I've launched products before that I've spent months and months thinking about, developing and overthinking, and have seen very little come of it. And 9 months, a year, and then nothing happens. Or I've seen things that are launched within a month or two of the idea. You just get moving and kind of put it out there as a minimum viable product. And what's really cool about doing it that way is that you actually start to learn things faster because the market is telling you what they want or what they don't want. So it helps you develop the idea better. Now, it can be a little bit painful along the way because you're like, oh, you're changing things up and changing things up and changing things up. But what you're doing by doing that is that you're actually getting real life feedback in the wild as it's happening versus you can sit around for 9 months to a year and just feel good about it because you've got this great idea and your friends and family will tell you what a great idea is. And yeah, this is going to be so cool when it happens. But then you put it out there and nothing happens. So I'm going to just tell you, like, you need to move fast. Everything I'm going to talk about is yes, process it, give it its adequate amount of time to process and make calculated risk. But at the same time, don't waste a lot of time overthinking it. Just kind of try to move. So we'll try to help with some of that mindset development as well, because I know it's hard to overcome. And so it's something that we'll focus on. All right, that is it for the first episode. I know this is just a lot of information. I'm just trying to kind of give you a little bit of a baseline around who I am and kind of things I'm going to be thinking about talking about on this podcast. Hope you'll listen to future episodes, and then again, please feel free to reach out to me as well as let me know, success stories or questions that you might have. And if you do like it, it always helps if you can subscribe, and it always helps if you can write a review. So over time, I'm hoping that you'll take a moment to write a review and subscribe to the podcast because that helps me in trying to kind of build a larger audience and spread the word around what it is we're trying to do. All right, that does it for this week. Again, thank you very much for listening. I hope that you'll listen to future episodes. Remember to always focus on the things that will go right. It's very easy for us to worry about the things that are going to go wrong, but we need to change that mindset and be thinking about the things that will go right. And I hope that each week I'll be able to give you a little sliver of a reminder about just how to make sure you're always thinking about all the things that can go right. What can go wrong is what stops a lot of people from being successful. If you knew already what the roadmap was and how things were going to turn out for you, it would make you just do all kinds of different decisions, right? But at the end of the day, everything works out in the end. It just always does. Good, bad, or indifferent, it usually works out better somehow. So be focused on what will go right. And I'll see you next week on the Productize or Perish podcast. Thank you.